So this is going to be the trig ratios quiz review key. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go through and, well, do all these problems. So it asks you to, given this diagram, you want to know the dimensions for a roof. So find the lengths of AC, CD, and BE. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and boldly call AC X to ease labeling, CD Y, and BE Z. Okay. Now the other thing that we have to consider is we've got a picture where AC is part of this and CD, and they're all kind of overlapping. But if you look carefully, hopefully you can see two overlapping triangles. And kind of the easiest way to do this is to pull those two overlapping triangles, like this one, and then the larger one. Let's use that in the green here, right? They are one triangle plopped on top of another, right? Something like that. Because what you can do is pull those apart, or in your case, probably just draw them separately, right? And then label all the appropriate information you got. So, of course, this means that this is a right angle, as is this, right? This angle down here is 42 degrees, and that is shared by this. We probably should label the sides, or the vertices. That's A, right? B and E from the smaller triangle. That's A, C, and D from the larger. And then we need to label some side lengths. Now, remember this tick mark here, this 5, and then the tick mark. That tick mark means feet, which means that this is really referencing feet, which means that this smaller triangle has a 5-foot side. Now, the reason we know that is because if there's a mark in between, you go from point to point, nearest point to nearest point, which tells you that's 5. Same logic, that means from E to D, right? From E to D is 3 feet. So if you want to find out the length of AD, which would be the AE and ED taken together, that would be 5 plus 3, or 8 feet. And now what we can do is we can go through and put in what our unknowns are, what we're trying to find. So like AC is this side here, so that's our X that we're trying to figure out. CD is our Y right here. And BE is this side here, Z, okay? So now what we can do is we can set up some trig ratios and actually solve these things, okay? So we'll start with Z just because it's there, all right? So looking at that, 42 degrees, that's the opposite. This is the adjacent, which means that the tangent of 42 degrees is equal to Z over 5. Because the unknown is in the numerator, all we do is multiply both sides by 5, so Z is equal to the tangent of 42 degrees, which is 4.5, don't forget your marks, feet. So I've shown my setup and the solution and then the final answer with units, okay? And we'll do the same for X and Y. So let's do X first. It's going to be a little bit trickier. So X, well, if we want to follow X is the hypotenuse, right? And the only side we know is this, which is the adjacent. So adjacent hypotenuse, that means the cosine of 42 degrees is equal to 8 over X. Now then for the solution, because X is in the denominator, that means we multiply by X and divide by cosine of 42. In other words, we can switch those two, and then 8 divided by the cosine of 42 would be 10.7. Don't forget your units, feet. If you want to write FT period, that works too. And then last but not least is Y, and the 42. Now that's the opposite, and I'm going to go with the only other side we know exactly, or this is approximate because we rounded it. So I would say that that's the tangent, very similar to Z, right? The tangent of 42 degrees is equal to Y over 8 this time. It's a Y, believe it or not a 4, which means we multiply both sides by 8, and that equals 7.2 feet. We're all set, okay? Now the next problem, surveyor standing 50 feet away from the tree, right? The center of the base of a large tree. Now we assume that that's a right angle there, representing the height, yes. The surveyor measures the angle of elevation, right? Up from this is 71.5. To the top of the tree is 71.5. how tall is the tree? Well, the tree's height would be this here. We'll call that x. So the triangle we're looking at would be 71.5, right angle. This is 50 feet, and this would be x. So then we would take, that's the opposite, that's the adjacent, that would be the tangent of 71.5 would equal x over 50. X then equals 50 times the tangent of 71.5. So x equals a grand number total of 149.4. And don't forget units, feet. Okay. All right. The next problem is another application, same idea. It's kind of hard to see, but there's actually lines in here, right there and there, forming a right triangle. So the biologist wants to know the width of the river, that is how far across directly. We'll call that x, right? First takes a sighting, we call that point C here, and then walks back 100 feet parallel to the river. So that means he had to walk back. This side length would be 100 feet, and then measure this angle at 22 degrees. So this is the opposite side, this is the adjacent, which means that the tangent of 22 equals x, or the width. You could use w, that might make more sense, over 100. We multiply both sides by 100. Notice how I'm showing my work each time. And 100 times the tangent of 22 is 40.4 feet. That's it. So the last four problems are strictly, or simply, I should say, applications of just finding these sides. So based on this angle, this would be the opposite side. This would be the hypotenuse, which means opposite hypotenuse means sine of 64 is equal to x over 4, which means x equals 4 times the sine of 64, which is 3.59, or 3.6 if you wanted to round. But please note, I did not have to do anything else here. All I did, no units or anything like that, all I did was just find the value, okay? Same thing here, except this is the adjacent side and this is the hypotenuse, which means cosine. So the cosine of 55 degrees would be x over 10. We're in luck. Variables on top, so we just multiply 10 times the cosine of 55, which is equal to 5.73. That's it. This next one, next to last one, opposite, adjacent. So the tangent of 35 degrees is equal to x over 14. Variable on top, so we just multiply 14 times the tangent of 35 is 9.80. Okay. And the last one is slightly different in that it's still the opposite and the adjacent, so that's not different, which means we're still taking the tangent, but, so tangent of the angle, opposite over the adjacent. So in this case, we have to multiply by x and divide, or the x and the tangent of 21 switch spots. 8 divided by the tangent of 21 is 20.88. Let's try that again. 20.84. And that's it. So that concludes the quiz review. Thanks.